Hey everybody, Sean Bukowski here. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend and ready for a big week. Let's get going and have some enthusiasm for the new week. Um, this week on the blog, I'm going to talk about something, kind of go back to something I talked a little bit about 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, I found this article about Tesla looking to build a neighborhood that would be basically solar powered by the Tesla solar panels, of course. It was interesting, and we wrote about the sort of whether solar makes sense for property owners going forward. But one of the things that it kind of reminded me of, because of the Tesla neighborhood is sort of near the Tesla plant that they're building, and it kind of reminded me of the old company towns. And not that what Tesla's doing is company town, I'm not saying that, but it just kind of reminded me of that. And that got me thinking about how a couple years ago, some of the Silicon Valley companies, specifically Facebook, Amazon, Google, were looking into building their own housing for their employees because, we've talked about this before, there's such this huge housing affordability issue throughout the entire country. And so these companies were looking into building their own housing as a way of helping their employees. And that definitely reminded me of the old company town. So I want to talk a little bit about that and sort of the parallels. If you're not familiar with company towns, back in the sort of late 1800s up through like the 30s, some of these companies would build towns that they wholly owned, and that their employees could live in. There were shops and schools, and everything was sort of self-contained in these towns owned by the companies. Now, for a while, it sort of started out okay, I think, but eventually you can see how it could become problematic. And a couple of the problematic is towns owned everything. People didn't own the property, they just leased it. And so if you got fired, you were in big trouble of getting evicted. If you wanted to leave your job and go to a different job, you not only are leaving a job, but you're leaving housing. And so that was a separate issue that would kind of have you stuck to your job. And then with the towns, because the companies own these towns, some of them where there was complaints that the leases and the housing and the shops, the goods in the shops, were so expensive that folks would go under debt, and basically become indentured servants to the companies that have to work off that debt. So it was a real, it fell out of favor kind of in the late 30s, early 40s, because of the issues surrounding these company towns. And now with these sort of new the potential housing being built by the Silicon Valley companies, it sort of reminded me of that. And I'm not saying that they're the exact same, because they're not. And in fact, really, these companies should be kind of applauded for sort of thinking about different ways to solve affordability issues for their employees in housing. For example, Facebook, I think, is building 1,700 units in Menlo Park, and Google has talked about building 15,000 modular homes, and Amazon is spending $2 billion in 3 different cities for housing for their employees. And I think that is sort of really outside the box kind of thinking, that should be applauded. But they really want to make sure that they don't go down the same path as some of these original company towns, because you don't want your housing tied too closely to your employer, because it just limits so many things, so many movement and opportunities for the employees, and really it just puts the employees in a precarious position, potentially. Not saying that's where they're going, but I just think we need to be careful as we build, as we look for solutions to affordability problems, to not go down the same path as these company towns did back in the 30s. Thanks a lot, Sean Bukowski. Sign up for our blog and our video blog here, and have a great week.